DJ LeRoy.
Hey, Night Watchman, how you doing, buddy?
Great. How are you?
Good, good. So, Night Watchman, you know what? We're in the midst of the NBA Finals, and besides that, sports in general. I just need to know the impact of the African American athlete in that particular space. Head, what do you think?
Oh, there are African American athletes in sports?
I have heard that our numbers, especially in baseball, are down, and you know what? Maybe we'll actually find out why. What do you think?
Let's jump into it.
Okay, okay. Well, first, I guess this is his first time coming to the Soul Lounge. Is someone who I hold dearly in my heart, and this is none other than the one, the only Marcus Reynolds. Bring him up, Marcus.
How you doing? How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what? The next one, yeah, he is a sports head, even though his sometimes his vocation has been in elsewhere. And we certainly know he's a returning guest on Soul Lounge Prime Time, and that is none other than Damian Fagon. Bring him up.
Hey,
Damien.
hey, how you doing?
Good, good, my brother. All right. And then you know why I'm really, really excited, Night Watchman? Can you
I
tell why?
know. I do know. Yes,
Why is that, Night Watchman? Tell me.
because we've got one of the leading journalists who has covered the black athlete and sports from a black perspective for decades, really. And we're glad to have him on the show.
Can you say $40 million slave? Maybe it's 80 million by now, but yes,
Yes.
the one, the only, Mr. William Rhoden. What's up, Bill?
Hey guys, how y'all doing? Thanks for having me on the legendary show. Great to make my debut in the lounge.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Bill, if we can kind of like dive in, because I understand that there was an NBA final game one that happened, between Golden State and Boston, and it looked like they were about to put Boston away in the fourth quarter. It started out they were down like 12 points. What happened?
Yeah, I think Golden State's still trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure it out. It looked like Golden State had not lost a game during the playoffs at home at the fabulously rich, the arena, and maybe that's part of the reason why people are a little too cool. It's just too much money. It's too wealthy. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, it looks like it was over. They were up 12. They were rolling. Curry's doing his little jig and all that. And then, man, out of nowhere, Al Horford finds the fountain of youth. The young kid, White, who's been having a phenomenal playoff series, comes from nowhere, and actually Jaylen Brown.
Yes.
Jaylen Brown played really, really, really well, and they just kept coming. They just kept coming, and they're an elite defensive team. They're an elite defensive team.
Smart will drive you crazy. You're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, in a couple of different ways. They just came at them, and man, next thing you know, you looked up, they tied it. The next thing you know, up there up by 11. And like 3 minutes, you said, man, this is over. So it was really a I don't know what you guys think about the playoffs in general. I know the last round was bizarre just because teams were winning on the road instead of at home. But it was just a really, really good way to begin the series because they say the series really begins when the home team loses. So
yes.
I think this is going to be very very compelling. And now you had mentioned off air about I think I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think you're saying you were pulling for Boston after not pulling for Boston, now kind of pulling for Boston, and I don't know if that had a lot to do with Golden State.
No, Bill. Let me be clear. The last time that I rooted for Boston, and I'm not rooting for them in the series, but the last time I did was with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. Beyond that, all during, of course, the Bird era, I was strictly LA. and I have not deviated from that. In other words, anything but Boston.
Right. Well, does LA still have a franchise? Do they still have?
They have
You know?
McDonald's.
Yeah, it'll be a long time before that train comes back in the station. No, but it's been great. It was a great scene, and we'll see. But I think the playoffs, this is the part of sports that I particularly like in any sport, playoffs. When you kind of waltz through an 83-game season, or in baseball, whatever that is, 100 a gazillion games, but it's really the playoffs so this is really good. I'm looking forward to the rest of it.
Nice. And Marcus, from your vantage point, what were you able to observe with that first game that happened on Thursday?
First of all, it was a great game. What I saw for the most part was, Curry came out scorching, had 21 in the first quarter, but only finished with 34 points. So no points in the second quarter. I thought the game really changed in the second quarter. Golden State, they were on about an 8-0 run, and then Jaylen Brown pulled up for a mid-range with about 7 minutes and 20 seconds left. That basically stopped the run, and then Boston went on their own 10-0 run, and we're up 2 at half. So when the game was looking like Golden State was going to run away with it, Boston, they made their run like we're supposed to do to get back in the game. So I thought that second quarter really changed it all. Obviously, Golden State just collapsed in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you can blame them. Boston, they literally just hit a ton of threes. Al Horford, Derek White. 40-16 was that fourth quarter. So they outscored them, they outplayed them in that quarter, and that's what made the difference. I mean, that is a tough loss for the Golden State for sure.
Absolutely. Damian, your observations?
Golden State's a fourth quarter team. Like, that's when they beat teams.
Right.
And they do that, and they love doing that in the finals. And I think Boston planned for that and then just went hard as hell in the fourth quarter, disrupting them on defense, hitting big shots. If you can hang with Golden State in the fourth quarter, then you have a shot at beating them, because I've seen games where Golden State's down 15 at the half, and I'm still just like, they're gonna win. Like, they're always they're a second half team, especially in the postseason, because of all the experience they've got and who Curry is. But yeah, I think if you plan to just go insane on them on defense, hit big shots in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter, you really can disrupt what Golden State tries to do to teams.
Gotcha. And you know what, Bill, you had mentioned a name slipped out and said Tito, because certainly I did not even know that Al Horford was Dominican heritage, and that his father's name is Tito. But Tito he had, gotcha. Has he always had this a long range 3-pointer, like he was on display on Thursday, or is this an anomaly?
No. He's always been a very versatile player. Even when he was Boston the first time around, he was always able to hit that, that 3-pointer. He always had a nice long game. But he's, Al Horford, and by the way, Tito Horford, I remember when his dad, somewhere I still got my blue ribbon yearbook I used to get every day. It was like a scouting book that this guy, Chris Wallace, used to put out. And it had all the great high school players coming out. And I had one when Tito Horford was coming out.
Wow.
And Tito was going to be the man. He was like a big time, coming out of high school, big time player. And his career, he kind of had a, okay career, but, and he was a good guy. And he's very close to Al. They're inseparable. When you go to the games, you see them together. It's really nice. But and Al's a really, really a solid guy, very professional. But, after all that, this is still his first time in the finals. So then last year this time he was buried in Oklahoma City. I mean, like buried. He may have thought his career was over. So it's really nice. Like I said, it's like a long road. We still have it's really a long, it's a long way to go. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we shall see.
We definitely will. And I see that good old Mr. Archer has joined us. And Mr. Archer, we were talking about, of course, the game that occurred on Thursday between Golden State and Boston. And surprise, surprise. What were your thoughts?
I mean, and let me just say this as someone who is deeply invested in Boston losing the series. I feel okay. If they needed Derek White to act like Michael Jordan in order to steal a game away, I'm okay with that. That's not happening again. And Al Horford is not going to stroke threes again. That's
just Bill, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, just amazing seeing JJ. Can we still call him that? I can't remember the last time. I mean, it's been decades, man. I'm just trying to get over that. Just to see this grown man.
Absolutely. Good to see you again, Bill.
But I wouldn't. I mean, you just never know with these things. I mean, that's the great thing about. This is like not the Final Four. Where it's one and done. This is great. That's why they have these series. The adjustments on top of adjustments. I do think that just like you said, that White not going to have another game like that. But Tatum is not going to have another game like that either.
Fair, absolutely fair.
So that's why they play these games, see it play out. But I just find these series amazing. Whether it's the baseball series, the NBA series, football is more. Football is more like the March Madness, where if you have an off game,
that's it.
That's true. That's true. So and Bill, let's go have a little discussion in terms of $40 million slave, right? Just want to also kind of like understand. Let's say Jackie Robinson, he breaks the color line 1947. Now, and I think probably in the early to mid 70s, our numbers were actually pretty darn good in terms of African Americans in baseball. But now we're struggling to actually have any notice. Would you say that, let's say, because of the lack of African Americans in baseball, that has been supplanted by, let's say, more and more Latin players in that space?
Yeah, well, it's a very complicated issue, but remember in the 40s, baseball was really one of the only games in town, outside of college football, and pro football was really not a factor. Pro basketball really did not exist significantly. So basically, you had like boxing, horse racing. That kind of thing. And also, baseball was a very integral part of the Black community. It was really part of our livelihood, because you had a multi-million-dollar business in Negro League baseball. And so that was part of our ecostructure. Baseball was really part of our ecostructure. And I think, when the game was desegregated with Jackie, that was sort of the beginning of the end of taking these businesses and these people out of our community. And that's what integration or desegregation did to our community in general. It was sort of like a hurricane. Integration was this hurricane that came through our community and broke us up into a billion little pieces, and we're still trying to put ourselves together. It was not just baseball, but even like the music. Jazz is such a integral part of our community. You had musicians living in the community, and that also would would, a lot of our musicians would now move uptown, play uptown. So, so it was, and we've never, and baseball has never recovered. And you actually talk about the Latin influence. I mean, baseball is almost 30% of the players come from the Latin diaspora.
Wow.
Is it only 30%?
Yeah, it's around 30%. And we are having a conversation about that. I was in Philadelphia the other day, actually yesterday. And we were talking about the different dynamics of Latin players, because you would think that with them Latin players being about 30% of the league, they would be clamoring to have greater representation as managers and executives.
Right.
But it was sort of pointed out that they are oftentimes in a very tricky position in terms of being in a position to there's immigration issues, there's all types of political issues that make it inconvenient to really speak out and to rock the boat and to make waves. And so there's a whole dynamic there. So in some ways, it's a more appealing population to have because, unlike having African-American athletes in football, where you just never can tell who's going to demand this or demand that. And frankly, I think that when you look at the white American athlete, baseball really is the only sport that's still where they have kind of open access. It's not really in the NBA,
right?
Really in the NFL. Hockey is, has always been sort of like a Canadian, kind of sport. So baseball is that sort of one island for the white American athletes. So I think all that kind of enters into it too. Do you really, for all the lip service about, well, we've got to get more African Americans in the game? Do you really want it to look like, the NBA or the NFL? So
there's another factor that I think also needs to be addressed, which is just, baseball has not been as good at marketing their sport in recent years as the NFL and the NBA.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Can I finish my statement?
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens is the elite athlete that comes out has a choice. They can, usually have an athlete who can play baseball, they could play football, they could play basketball. And they have been gravitating more toward the NFL, more toward the NBA than they do toward baseball. So baseball has not been able to secure the types of athletes that they used to get on a regular basis, and that's been a problem. And this is something that a theory that was espoused. I kind of heard it from the late Bob Watson, former general manager of the Yankees, because that was something that he was concerned with as a baseball guy, how he could get more blacks into the sport, and that was the issue that he felt that they faced, that not being able to get the elite athletes anymore.
Well, even the scholarship is an issue. Football, basketball are they're talent-driven sports. In other words, you come out of high school, you go to college, and you get a scholarship, a full scholarship. Baseball doesn't really do that. You'll get like maybe a partial scholarship here, partial scholarship there. So you're absolutely right. It's just, it's so many levels, it's not feasible. And then I was at a function in Las Vegas over the weekend, and there was a tight end there named Eric Green. I don't know if you guys remember. Eric Green was like a hell of a tight end. And he had his son. He introduced me to his son, who looked like he could be a linebacker, but it turns out he's expected to be a number 1 draft pick in baseball. He's like a fielder. And but what we are saying is that if you look at a guy like that and a guy like Kyler Murray, it's going to take his son a few years, to really get paid. He's going to have to go to A-ball, AA, and all that. Where you look at a guy like Kyler Murray, who left Oklahoma and went to the NFL and immediately got paid. You know, so there's a lot of issues, but I would say that in terms of your body and your health, baseball probably is the better deal. Is the better deal, just in terms of the wear and tear on your body and how long you can play and all that. But if you're talking about the here and now, what did Reverend Ike say? Heaven on earth.
Absolutely.
I played a lot of baseball as a kid, and I was headed down that route from like 6th to 9th grade, and then I grew to be like over 6 feet tall. Forced onto the basketball court. I'd also say that like you couldn't play growing up in DC. You couldn't play pickup baseball.
Right.
You couldn't find other kids in the neighborhood to start a baseball game. You need like 20 players, and you obviously like even harder than that. Like if you imagine going out with your dad to like play basketball, you can't go out and just knock balls out the park and then go spend 30 minutes picking them up and then come back. It was just a hard game to get better at on your own without like a paid private club team or something. Like even your high school team or middle school team wouldn't play that often or practice enough. So but the other thing I'll say, because so much Jackie Robinson talk earlier, this is how close we are still to that generation. His widow lives in my building.
Wow.
He used to live in this building and she still lives here. I think she splits time between other house, but she's still around. I've literally seen her in the hallways before.
Interesting. And James, what were you about to say?
I was going to say that, Bob was mentioning something about how the MLB hasn't been great at marketing. I would argue that some of the issues that the MLB is facing is inherent to the sport itself, and the fact that it is, 3+ hours and it's incredibly slow paced. And some of the things, regardless of marketing, like you're not going to be able to match the excitement of an NBA game, of the constant nonstop running back and forth, high paced nature of the game. And so, it does definitely appeal. It kind of speaks to the fact that the NBA is more exciting and more popular among a younger crowd. It's just the nature of the sport is different.
No, I totally co-sign. I remember I used to watch the Orioles growing up because we didn't have the Nationals then. I was a big Orioles fan. And I would spend all Saturday and Sunday just watching an Orioles game because it'd be like 4 hours long. And then I think I was around, 11 or something when I first caught like NBA on NBC Sundays or something, where it was like that back, they used to do 12 to like 9 o'clock games. Like it'd be like, and it'd be Jordan. This is like Jordan's era. And then I basically like caught one of those days, was glued to the TV watching NBA basketball all Sunday. And I never went back to baseball because it was just like so much more engrossing to watch as a kid, how quickly it moves and stuff. With baseball, man, you're in for fall asleep a couple times in one game.
Gotcha.
Well, again, I don't want.
No, go ahead.
There's a whole soccer discussion too, because that's yet another elephant in the room.
Well, Bill, we're not talking about France, who was dominated by African players now, are we?
Well, somebody was reminding me that even our national team, the U.S. national team, for the first time, I think may have like 4 or 5 of Black Americans on the team. And soccer has been, because my argument was soccer, like baseball, soccer in the United States is a middle to upper middle class sport. Because again, just like baseball, it can be very expensive to play.
Yeah.
And but for some reason, soccer has been really trying to tap in to this Black athletic market. And I don't know if it will never become like football, basketball, but it could surpass baseball.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I started watching Premier League soccer during the pandemic in 2020. I mean, I've always been a fan of soccer, but I was like, let me pick a team. Let me get into this. The first thing I noticed is like the timing of these matches is difficult for any American. You're talking like 8 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
The second thing that I noticed that's amazing, that it really is incredible, is that our generation is also increasingly not used to or uncomfortable watching commercials. We stream so much. And so I can barely watch an NFL game anymore because we're talking like 15 minutes of gameplay, 3 hours of commercials. It's just like, it's miserable. And it's nonstop commercials. And then a soccer game is,
the opposite.
Pure play. It's 90 minutes of pure play. You're just watching a beautiful game being built, and the offense is being built, and the defense like countering, and you can just stay engrossed in the game. With the way football is broken up, the choppiness of it with the 5 minutes of commercials in between every play, it's not funny anymore. And I think a lot of younger people are also just like find it unwatchable.
Wow. And Marcus, you growing up there in Maryland, what was the first sport that you embraced?
So yeah, growing up, I was always, basketball, football, baseball. I really couldn't put a finger on like what happened, to me watching, Major League Baseball. I just kind of fell out of it. I used to go to a lot of national games, Oriole games. I've been in the old Yankee Stadium. I used to get the video game MLB 2K. I used to do all that. But as I got older, it kind of, I think it goes back to point Damian was making earlier, accessibility. It's easier to go out and hoop in our communities than to get people to play baseball. And when I was watching baseball growing up, you had stars like Barry Bonds, Derek Jeter, who somewhat resembled us. They were very marketable. Now I couldn't tell you. I know Vlad Guerrero Jr. I couldn't tell you anyone who I'd want to watch on a daily basis. And especially with the long season, got a bunch of games. So it's different. So I can't put a finger on it per se, but it's definitely an interesting topic.
Gotcha. And you know what, Bill, I'm going to circle back to once again this political statement in terms of the African-American athlete in this day and age. Do you think that they have more power than they had before? That's one. And then two, whether or not they are indeed using it for social good. Anyone weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is sort of interesting. I always think about if I was going to write the sequel to $40 Million Slaves today, what would be the first chapter? You probably lead off with LeBron. So yeah, I think that they're making more money, and the question becomes, has money been a tool of liberation, or has it been a shackle? Because you don't want to, you're making so much and you don't want to lose it. And I've even changed in terms of, you see what happened to a guy like Kaepernick. Who goes out there, kneels, and he may never work again. Not may, probably will never work again. And I think other people see that. That's like what they would do on a plantation, where they take one enslaved person out in the middle of the day and give them like 100 lashes, and tell the other people, let this be a lesson. And I think that when you see what they do to, what they can do to, how easily it can be taken away. If you're in a position like the kid who plays for Boston, Damian, what's his name, White?
Derek White.
Darren White, yeah. Do you really want to risk? This is your one shot. Do you want to risk generational wealth? For what? And I guess the question is, we did see stuff during the pandemic. I mean, during the, when the Milwaukee Bucks decided they weren't going to play a game. And to me, that was really, really significant because you had collective action.
Right.
It was not just one person. It was everybody. And you can't fire everybody.
That's right.
So, yeah. So short answer is that I think particularly there's more power, but I guess what are the issues? What are the issues? And are they economic issues? And will it take more coming together, buying, doing things like buying banks, building schools, rather than just doing things, like in public, kneeling or putting your fist in the air. You saw, the manager of the Giants, Gabe Kapler, decide that, he was disgusted after the shootings in in Texas that he wasn't going to come out for the national anthem until, so I mean, there's that kind of stuff.
Right.
But to your question, do they have more power? I think, yes, they do have more potential power, but I think we have to do a better idea of, what are the issues? What are we going to march on? Where, where are we going to storm?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
One thing I want to say about at least the NBA, and this is the players union or whatever. I think they've definitely, the players themselves, black players in the NBA, just as an example, have gained a lot of leverage and control over the league and control over salary. And I feel like, they split profits basically with all the owners 50-50, correct? Which is huge because that doesn't happen in the NFL, doesn't happen in the MLB, doesn't happen in other leagues. But what I think I've seen is like a lot of the power that they use as leverage is almost exclusively in contract negotiations and in profit sharing. It doesn't necessarily extend beyond that to other political arenas. Mostly, I think superficial kind of protests, the right to protest essentially is what they were like using their leverage for, which is, I think, a step in, backwards. Like, we've always had the right to protest. We don't need to convince our employers of that. Although the NFL might be a different story, but you've seen these salaries explode in the NBA because of their union power. Less leverage in other areas of their lives.
Beautiful. Gentlemen, Mr. Rhoden has to actually leave for another engagement. So is there any final parting thought that you'd like to leave us with, Bill?
Well, I'd like to come back to the lounge. I think this has the potential for a great, great conversation.
Absolutely.
But just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep grinding, keep the faith. And, and JJ, if I were you, I wouldn't put too much money on Golden State.
Wow. Y'all hold it. I'm sorry, you can't let that go. So what do you have to say to Bill?
I'm just saying, as long as I'm rooting against Boston, I'm doing something right.
All right, Bill. So, all right, gentlemen. Please, this is as they say, freewheeling that we're going to be doing here. So,
I want to pick up this conversation about activist athletes, and let's also give a nod to the black female tennis players and how they've taken a stand, particularly Naomi Osaka and even Coco Gauff when she won the game that put her into the final. Her first thing was putting something out about end gun violence. And so it's easier with tennis because you don't have a superstructure. You're pretty much an independent contractor. So you don't have to ask questions of people. With team sports, there's a lot of balance. You're still getting a check from another organization. And we saw what happened with Kaepernick. We saw what happened with we talk about Michael Jordan, who has definitely never been an activist athlete and has only really ever paid lip service to those types of causes. I think his famous quote was, hey, Republicans still buy sneakers too, which is his reason for not taking political stances. And seeing LeBron, who has been the actual opposite of that, and not only put his word out there on particular things such as George Floyd, but also he's put his money into things such as the schools that he's created in.
And he's made more money than Jordan. And he's made more money. Like, that's the most amazing part, is that you guys just saw yesterday, LeBron's a billionaire now.
No, he has not made more money than Jordan. He's made more money
in his career.
No, he's on track. He's on track to make a lot more money than Jordan.
Jordan
still as a player.
Jordan makes more money every year than every NBA player from sneakers.
Nah, but what I'm saying is that LeBron's 37 and he's worth $1 billion. Michael Jordan is worth $1.7 billion. LeBron will surpass Jordan because he signed better deals and because he negotiated more salary.
Yeah, but you also have to look at timeline. Michael Jordan was kind of he created him and David Falk kind of created the mold for that type of charismatic celebrity athlete and created those opportunities. So it's very hard to compare apples and oranges. Who has a better deal than Michael Jordan? Rihanna has a better deal. She actually owns half of her brand. Michael Jordan makes money from his brand, but he doesn't own it. Nike owns it.
He's also not a talented businessman, to be honest with you. Michael Jordan's net worth has actually been decreasing over the last 5 years.
Really?
He was worth over $2 billion for a while. Now he's worth 1.7, 1.5.
And I again feel like part of that is, Michael Jordan came up with David Falk, and David Falk created the opportunities, and David Falk has been very good at staying behind the shadows. But I would suspect that David Falk probably makes as much money as Michael Jordan does, but nobody knows it. I don't have any evidence for that, but I know that he was the one that cut all those deals. LeBron was smart enough to build his own team around him. And so it's easy for LeBron to be a better businessman because he literally has, his team. He's got Maverick Carter there. He's got, Rich Paul? He's got, he built the team around himself going in, which would put him in a position where he could focus on, being excellent on the court and know that he could be excellent in business without having to, do a deep dive into it because he had people to do that.
Nice. James, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I wanted to go back to what we said before about kind of talking about athletes being activists and why we look to them specifically, especially NBA players, as supposed to be activists when there are so many other people who have an equal platform to them. Like, we don't look at Drake and say, Drake, why aren't you protesting? Or we don't look at Denzel or other black actors and ask, why aren't you protesting? It seems like a disproportionate amount of scrutiny that black athletes, especially NBA players, get, and I don't think it's necessarily like justified, right? I would hope that everyone with a platform uses it for good, but I don't think athletes in particular are obligated in a way that other public figures are not.
Gotcha.
I think there's a historical context to look at it. That if you look back in the 60s and 70s. Most of the major black athletes were activists. You had Jim Brown, you had Muhammad Ali, you had Kurt Flood, you had
Bill Russell,
Bill Russell. You had the guys, the Olympic guys who with the black fist salute.
John Smith and John Carlos. That's right, Tommy Smith.
So there has been a history of those athletes being up front. But at that point in time, the entertainers were more activists too. You had the Harry Belafontes, the Sidney Poitiers, the Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dees. All of the entertainers in that era were more activists too. So I think there's been a decline across the board, and I'm glad to see a return. I think Jay-Z and Beyonce in the last few years have been a lot more activists. And we're starting to see more of that, coming from the entertainment side too. I feel that all of them, there should be an obligation and a debt to the community that basically has helped them create all this wealth. Yeah.
Well, so I just want to quickly say that there's one athlete in between those activist athletes and the modern day athlete that the documentary about his life changed my perspective on this, and that's O.J. Simpson. When O.J. Simpson got that Hertz
deal, that's right.
Yeah. This is also in the 80s. Reagan. This is when you see the increase of corporate power in America.
Yep.
Athletes today, they make more money through sponsorships than they do through salaries from playing the game.
Yep.
LeBron has made $300 million from the NBA, but he's made $900 million in sponsorships and other deals. Wow. Those sponsorships come with caveats about your politics. Like Nike doesn't let you go out and say, whatever you want to say. They have legal language in all these contracts, and that's LeBron James. If you're like a lower tier NBA player or baseball player, or football player, your sponsorship deals are contingent on you shutting up. And so I think what really changes is the way corporations started involving themselves in athletics, and with artists, record labels, Universal Music Group. Like they're all these contracts now, and stipulations about what you can do with your public image, what you can say, what you can have a perspective on. And I think when we see someone like LeBron who's able to say all these things, that's because he's LeBron James. Like you can't do that if you're, anyone other than LeBron James. You know what I mean? So, looking at that corporate power and its influence over our athletes is huge.
So thoughts in terms of, let's say, NightWatchman had mentioned, of course, Harry Belafonte, Sidney Poitier, and that particular genre in terms of actors, right, who are in the particular space. And remember, we had Jesse Williams, who used to be on Grey's Anatomy, and remember his outspokenness there. Are there any other, let's say, actors that you can say that, okay, I think their headspace is right and they're saying the right things? Anyone that you can identify?
Hill Harper has been very, very activist. He's been particularly involved in getting Black people involved in cryptocurrency. But in general, he's been very, very outspoken, and that's one in particular, I'd say.
Okay. Marcus, your thoughts?
That's a tough question. I mean, I feel like in today's society, you got to kind of toe the line between, speaking out and not speaking out. Charles Barkley had that famous commercial, I am not a role model.
Right.
So I think for me personally, I'm not expecting like a LeBron to say anything, or, I mean, it's good. Everybody should use their platform, for, the benefit of others. But I think in the grand scheme of things, can't be really relying on these athletes. Like Damian said, corporations are pretty much running everything now. A lot of these guys got money tied up with these corporations and other things. So it's a lot tougher on today's athlete. The public is a lot more sensitive now, with cancel culture and all that. You look at like a Dave Chappelle, someone like that who can't even do his, stand up now without a big controversy.
Whoa.
Okay, James, I
can't let that shit stand. I mean,
what's up?
Dave Chappelle,
bro, you're yelling.
I mean, I have to yell because he dropped cancel culture unironically. Dave Chappelle says he bullies a specific population, is rewarded by tens of millions of dollars Netflix deals, can do whatever he wants, wherever he wants, and people are saying he's being silenced. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up at all. I don't want to go on the side.
When they're complaining about getting silenced, they start making more money.
Exactly. It's an industry. Like, I'm being silenced. Come pay to see me be silenced. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
I don't think it's that he's being silenced. I think it's just that, like, when something like that does happen, when there's a huge controversy, no one's really going to step up to the plate to try and do something, politically that could, create a discussion.
Yes.
That's all really. I mean, obviously, to be quiet as kept, Kaepernick got a bunch of endorsements after he did what he did.
Yeah, he got Nike.
That's right. That's right.
Nike took a huge risk
and a Netflix show.
That's right. And you know what, Damian? You're absolutely right. Nike knew the politics, the whole kneeling. Now, remember, is this before it was actually hijacked and saying disrespect for the flag? Which
no, it was after. It was after. It was Nike came through after he got kicked out of the team, couldn't find another team with the deal, and then there were videos of those guys burning their Nikes all over the country. I mean, Nike knows. So first of all, Nike has built like $1 trillion company off of Black culture. So it's
they know who's buying their shoes, and it's not the people who were burning Nikes actually had to go out and buy some Nikes to burn it, which also still benefits.
Exactly.
Well, that reminds me of if you guys haven't seen the HBO show about the Lakers, the
Showtime, I love it. Showtime,
Winning
Man,
time.
there is an amazing episode where Magic Johnson meets Phil Knight. Is it Phil Knight? Yeah, the guy, the founder of Nike. And he's deciding between, I think it's Reebok and Nike. And Phil Knight is just like this crazy dude sneaking into NBA events. He's like, you need this shoe. And they're just like, yo, you're nuts. And Magic Johnson turns down the deal that would have been worth billions of dollars if he had taken it. It was literally like Phil Knight was the only one going out there saying, like, if you sign a deal with me, I'll give you like 10% of the profits from every shoe that you sell, basically. Before that, it was always like a flat $5 million for your name and stuff.
Right.
But Phil Knight is the one who came up with, like, all right, well, if you sell more, every sneaker we sell, you make more money. So it gives them incentive to do it. And that was kind of like equity back in the day. That's what Michael Jordan ended up getting. That's what LeBron has. But that show is really, really interesting because the Lakers in 1980 and 1981, that's like the explosion of marketing and, you know, the drama of the NBA, Boston versus LA. And that's where it really starts making a ton of money and taking off. Like David Stern is in the show as like this geeky little intern. Like you can see the future of the NBA, like in him, like it's really fascinating.
Well, the interesting thing also is now there's a much more awareness about image and likeness. And we see that happening in college football now, where they're now able to get image and likeness deals. With that awareness, you know, that's really where the money is, because as an athlete, you are a celebrity, you are a brand, and how you protect and monetize your image and likeness is really what the ultimate long-term worth of being a celebrity athlete is.
Yes, that is true. And one thing I guess I have to find out from some of the younger heads who are here with us, Night Watchman. So you heard some of the comments from
you
Bill.
mean everybody but us? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of like that. Okay, so the whole thing in terms of the animus that is a lot of times hurled at Boston teams or New England teams. Where does that come from for you guys? Because certainly, is it? Go ahead. I see you about to react, James. So go ahead.
You're on mute, brother.
I'm laughing at a tweet that Damian shared yesterday, which is, you know, if Boston wins, the parade's going to look like January 6th.
So is that it in terms of, let's say, Boston, animus towards Boston, because we feel that the city itself is just racist, plain and simple. Okay, Damian, you too?
Man, I grew up hating every New England sports team, whether it be the Patriots or the Celtics. I don't know where it really came from. It probably has to do with like a black stepdad, a black dad who was just telling me that Boston was a terrible place. But it also comes up in that show, on the HBO show, because you guys, you know, remember for most of the 80s, it was Magic versus Bird.
Correct.
The black LA team versus the white savior, the great white hope of the NBA. And the show kind of dives into like why NBA players hated going to Boston and playing in Boston. They were literally getting called the N-word like as they walked out the locker room, like screaming like terrible racism at them throughout the 80s. And then obviously the other thing that it talks about is that, you know, Larry Bird won Rookie of the Year in Magic Johnson's rookie year as well. And Magic Johnson had infinitely better stats. And there was this idea that, you know, the Celtics are always seen as this great NBA team, but they just spent most of the 80s losing to LA, and they're still like lionized, and like they got all these endorsement deals, and they're all these fans. So it was, I think a lot of disdain for the Celtics started then. Obviously, just the word Celtics as well is just like, hey, where are we going with this?
Gotcha. Yeah, and Marcus, you too?
Yeah, I think it's kind of generational. You know, my parents, they can't stand Boston. You know, the Red Sox growing up, I didn't like them. Kurt Schilling, I can't stand. Tom Brady.
And for good reason with Kurt Schilling, I know. Good reason. But go ahead.
You know, Yeah, Tom Brady, Bill
Mhm.
Belichick. You know, I
Oh.
couldn't stand that.
Yeah. Well, now, Marcus, were you also able to embrace like I have? And guys, don't jump on me, but
I'm about to. I'm about to.
one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time is Tom. Yes or no?
Well, you can admire him, but
I'll
that
give you
still
that.
doesn't mean we can't hate him. I
Oh,
mean,
Yeah.
why?
this is sports.
Yeah, James, what were you about to say?
I mean, it's not like a hard take. Of course, he's one of the greats. That doesn't mean he's not like a Trump supporting asshole, you know, who should be booed at every opportunity.
James, you're really causing me to have to do edits.
Okay,
You
we
came
got you.
late. He missed the instructions.
The instructions, got you. Damon, you have that same feeling, man?
What's the feeling about what? Sorry.
Let's say that Tom Brady's one of the greatest of all time, but
yeah, no, I've hated Tom Brady my whole life up until he won the Super Bowl with Tampa, and now I'm just like, all right, fine.
Okay, well, gentlemen, like I say, Night Watchman, man. This is, like I said, this is one of these particular shows where we're going to have to definitely maybe even do a redo, you know, on some other
Now,
aspects.
there's also a New York versus Boston thing too. I mean,
Oh yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah. And certainly, we can say that not once but twice did we or did we not do them in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's yeah, you know.
Okay.
We have that. We've been holding on to that. That's our one little thing.
I mean, we recently passed 10 years with no New York City championship, so I can't even.
Yeah, so
I don't know. We can't really talk right now.
Well, hold on. So you're telling me you're not going to credit NYCFC? Is that what you're saying? So soccer does not.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Accurate.
The last thing I just want to say before we drop off here is that the New York Knicks are the most losing NBA team of the last 22 years. So of the entire 21st century. I want to close with that.
Wow.
Damien, it's on site, by the
way. More than the Sacramento Kings, bro. The Orlando Magic. What?
Oh man. So Night Watchman. I guess one of the things that we're talking about here, and Bill has also agreed that he's going to come back on, but we really want to take that deeper dive, like I said, into the aspects of the black athlete and its impact on, let's say, not only sport, but also I would say the body politic here in the U.S. And like I said,
so you want to start with Herschel Walker?
Wow. See. Okay, see.
Well, that's not even fair. That guy's got brain damage, man. That guy's got CTE like crazy.
Normally, let's say James, in terms of the race in Georgia. Well, yeah, you think of whatnot. Does he have a shot?
He's gonna win. Mark my words there. He's absolutely gonna win.
Really?
Absolutely gonna win.
Marcus?
No chance, man.
Thank you.
Like, what is he even talking about? People with common sense will not vote for that.
You're talking about Georgia.
You're
talking about Georgia.
I got faith in Georgia. There's good people in Georgia.
Okay, well.
Man, oh man. So okay, well, before we wrap this bad boy up, I need to get all of you guys in terms of some last minute observations in terms of the world of sports, the African American athlete, and the path forward.
I just want to. So my last thing is because Phil Knight was brought up. Phil Knight's recently been in the news because he wanted to buy Portland, and which brings me to the fact that there are still very, very few black owners anywhere. So we're talking about, we just hit, I think 50% of the coaches in the NBA are black. But we have we at one black owner? Just Michael Jordan? Yeah.
LeBron,
I mean, there are people with stakes, like Dwayne Wade has a stake in the Jazz, but no real owners other than Jordan. And I think that needs to be a metric that we hold. If we want real equity, the NBA is I don't know, 80% black. I don't know. I'm just coming up with some number. We should have 80% ownership.
Gotcha. Okay, Damian.
I think a really fascinating conversation about ownership happened in the NFL and the NBA when they were talking about black coaching and you know, the diversity of the players versus the coaching versus the staff, especially with all the nepotism in the NFL, with like every coach is like another coach's son, basically. But it's really interesting to look at who owns teams in America, because it's not like usually someone who just like worked really hard and got really rich. It's generational money. It's families. Families have owned the Lakers, own the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
You know, the Pittsburgh Steelers. These are people who had businesses in the 1920s and split them and sold them, and you know, their money comes from a time where we weren't even allowed to go to college, where women couldn't vote. You know what I mean? Like that. So when we look at who owns these teams, and you know, it's directly tied to structural, you know, discrimination and racism and the legacy of that in this country. And there's just no getting away from it. I think I'm not as hopeful for the future, because you look at the value of these teams now. When Jerry Buss bought the Lakers, he bought the Lakers for $25 million in 1979. These were $10 billion now. Like, what black owner is going to be able to like take the Lakers back from the Buss family? It's not going to happen. Right. These valuations for these teams have exploded in such a way that the only people who have access to them is venture capital. And if we're lucky, Michael Jordan, who's the greatest athlete of all time, could just afford the Charlotte. You know what I mean? Like, so there's not a lot of hope for, I think, black ownership in these teams, unless the valuations for them go down a little bit.
Absolutely. And Damian, funny enough that you mentioned that too, that also, because I understand that you were also in the quote unquote cannabis space. So in terms of adult use, legal, that is also the impediment in terms of ownership of black and brown communities getting into the space.
Yeah, access to capital. It's the number one impediment to a lot of it. It's just money. And you know, interestingly enough, I got to hang out a few weeks ago with Amari Stoudemire, because he is investing in cannabis in New York, and he's got a farm upstate. There's actually a lot of NBA players invested in cannabis because they recognize the opportunity. Kevin Durant's one of them.
Wow.
So,
gotcha. Marcus, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work to be done still. I mean, I look at a franchise like the Yankees with George Steinbrenner. You know, that franchise will, you know, he passed it on to his sons, and that's generational money. You know, that's probably never going to leave that family. So it's a lot of work to be done. I don't know what the answer is. Just gotta, I guess, come together. You build more of a community type of mentality and relationship with one another to try to figure this thing out.
Gotcha. And James, it looked like you were about to say something. Is that?
No.
I
said what I had to say. Yeah,
okay.
You just read.
Okay. Thank you. NightWatchman, last words, and then take us home.
Well, this has been Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. You can find us online at WHCR.org. You can find this particular show and others on YouTube and Facebook. We air on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Like, subscribe, share, and see you next week.
Beautiful. Sounds like a plan. Gentlemen, I would like to say thank you. And I'll see you on the flip side. Take care, guys.